call the meeting to order, please. Francesca, would you please take roll?
Commissioner Castagna,
Here.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Peak,
Present.
Commissioner Sovereign, not yet, Commissioner Wall. Here. Vice Chair Wotowski,
Here.
Chair O'Neill,
Here?
and Commissioner Sovereign.
I think
I
he's
see
here.
logged
He's
in.
muted.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Is it possible to unmute him or he has to do it himself? Yeah, he has to do it himself.
Mike,
I heard his voice one.
Mike, press the little red button down at the bottom.
That one. All right. Okay.
Yeah, that one. Maybe. Yeah,
Welcome.
good.
There we are.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you.
So we have one item on the consent agenda, and that's approval of minutes. Does everyone have an opportunity minutes? Anyone like to make a motion?
Move approval.
Second,
Thank you, sir.
that's Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Is there any discussion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor? How do you want to do
Chair
this?
Chair O'Neill, I still need to do a verbal roll call.
Okay,
Thank you. Commissioner Castagna,
Yes.
I'm sorry, we do need to take a public comment, I believe, as well. Open up to public comment with instructions,
With the minutes? We've never done that.
with all items,
We've never done it with the
even
minutes.
including,
agenda items? Okay,
that's my understanding of Brown Act requirements, but I could be wrong on that.
Well, we've never done it, but okay.
Okay, maybe we don't need to then. I'll check.
just for a minute, we have never done that. Francesca, please.
okay. For anyone following that would like to make a comment, please dial 831-582-6500. Again, that number is 831-582-6500. Please press *5 to be placed in the queue to speak.
And that's on items not on the agenda, right?
I think we're still voting on the
Right, I think-
minutes.
Yeah, it's the first,
Still on the minute.
the consent. Okay, and Chair O'Neill, there is nobody that is on the line.
Thank you very much. Would you please take the vote on the minutes?
Yes, so Castagna, we have an aye. Chair Evans, or Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Com- Commissioner Peak,
Oh, aye. It froze for me, but you're back. Aye.
Commissioner Sovereign,
Aye.
Commissioner Wall,
Aye.
Vice Chair Wotowski,
Aye.
Chair O'Neill.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So thank you. Motion carries unanimously. So the next item is a presentation by Bob Evans, virtual tour presentation.
Okay, let me see if I can press the right buttons. And start this up. So what this is a a presentation, if you will, like it's actually in Keynote because that runs on the iPad. The idea was that we wanted to get something in the way of audio visual available in the Colton Hall, if not all the museums. And so I mocked this up, and so I'll walk you through a little bit of it so you can see what's going on. All of these panels would be live in a real one. I only have 3 of them live. This one is it's not really about the Monterey Historic Park, but rather what they're doing. At the Custom House Plaza, they've had an iPad there that has a menu on it. And so Roberta and I were there, and I took some pictures of what they're doing. And this is their initial screen or home screen. And so you can click on these things and go to information about them. Here's the brief history screen. And this is the way their unit is mounted. I thought that was interesting because we had talked about a number of different, how are we going to secure it, where could it be mounted and that sort of thing. And here's an example of what they're doing. You can see that they have a wooden box that actually contains the iPad, and there's a little bit of wire here for the power of the iPad. This one is not connected to the web, but you could connect it to the web so that you could bounce other kinds of media besides those that are stored in the iPad. Stop me if you have any questions along the way. Here on this side, we have our cell phone tours. And so I put a map behind that so they can actually see where the cell phone units are. And then, of course, Mike and a lot of us have been working on the Battle of Monterey. And so people might be interested in that. And so these are all parts of what we've done over the years with the Battle of Monterey. And so you can see that we have the ability to play video. And we have a lot of resources, certainly from the Battle of Monterey, that we could use. And so that's just a brief tour of what we could do and some of the types of things that we might want to feature in such a audio-visual panel. Anybody have any questions? On that note, then, I guess I will.
Well,
I have a question.
like Kimberly has a question.
Thank
Okay.
you. I'm just trying to picture, so you've got this first, the screen that we're looking at right now is, that would be on every, I'm just trying to picture the uses here. Are you breaking this down into separate, like one iPad would, or an iPad in one location would feature just one of those sections that you have on this first page, or would it be everywhere just like this?
That's entirely up to us to
Oh,
decide what we want to do. And we might want to have a map that would get us from the current museum to all the other museums. I mean, there's just, it's up to your imagination to figure out what all we could do. I think in the beginning, we're likely to have just one iPad. And so at that point, I'll stop that so I can see everybody. Again, I think it's up to us to decide what would be useful. Maybe you could have one in Colton Hall that's just about all the different things that have happened in Colton Hall. And could have one dedicated to history, and so you'd have the Battle of Monterey and the exploration of Monterey and the mission period and all these different kinds of things. So it's really, what do you want to present? Colton Hall, of course, we've done reenactments of the Constitutional Convention and that sort of thing. So I think there's a wealth of material, and certainly more material could be developed over time.
I have a question. Could this also be placed on the city website? So it's available to anybody who's anywhere?
I think the answer is yes. I don't know. I'll have to explore that idea. I'm sure we could do something like that on the city's website, but it might be in a slightly different form. In other words, the guts, the programming might end up having to be different to do it on the web, but you certainly could make all of this into web pages, essentially.
Or I wonder if it's still in the development stage, whether you could do it the other way around, if you could do it on the website and then have that available in the museum.
Yes, that's certainly possible. Some of the museums that Roberta and I visited last year did exactly that. They had the tour of the museum on the web, and then it was piped into a machine on site, so that machine was actually going to the web for the material. So yes, if the city's website would like to host something like that, that's one way we could start. I'll need to talk to Eric about that, I suspect.
So actually, I maintain the museum's website and work with Eric, and I've actually been talking with the city manager's office about wanting to have virtual tours while we're closed. So I think, so we can work with you, Bob. I think that's a great idea. And then once we reopen, we can figure out what would be appropriate in Colton Hall to have in terms of an interactive panel like you showed. Yeah.
Okay.
If I could add to Inga's comments, we're going through an RFP for a brand new website citywide, and so this would be a great opportunity too, as we develop and build the new site, what that portal will look like for the museum's pages, and work with you, Bob.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that.
Bob, have you been able to talk to the people at the Custom House as to their experience with their iPad in place? Does it seem to get used very much, or is there a fight over it, or do you have any feel for that yet?
Well, when we were there, the day that I took those pictures, I talked to the docent that was there, and she said that it didn't get a huge amount of use, but on the other hand, there were people that came in and sat down and were there for an hour. And so, I think it all depends on who's there. My suspicion is that the younger generation, high school and below, certainly will come in and start tapping on the screen. We saw that everywhere we went where there were displays. Kids are attracted to that sort of thing, and if you catch them with a splashy display, they tend to get interested, and then they'll explore. And sometimes some of the places we visited, they're exploring stuff that's really sophisticated from a science point of view, for instance, and yet they would manipulate it and try to figure out what was going on.
Great.
So
Thank
again,
you.
I think it all depends on the audience.
And what would you say is the number of hours that it took for you to put that together, to do that mock-up?
Actually, it didn't take very long
Okay.
because I have most of that stuff, if not already sitting on my computer, because I was involved in with
Right.
the Battle of Monterey, and I have a cell phone tours brochure, so you just scan it and
Yeah.
you're off and running. So there are things that we need to take pictures of or collect. For instance, I don't know who is archiving the video of the Constitutional Convention, that sort of thing. I would like at some point to get pictures of all the materials we have for when Colton Hall was used as a school, and put together a little story about the school use of that building. And I'm sure there are other, and so the docents are probably a resource that we could use to not only to narrate that sort of thing, so that you have in effect the narration that you would get if you were there in person, with the documents, for instance, for the Constitution. That would certainly be possible. And the same thing with the PBL. We have docents that have done lots of presentations there, and we need a camera crew to videotape that. But then we can edit it and put it up online or on an iPad, whatever. So they're just acres of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. So I think any footage from museum-sponsored events would have been archived, I would hope, by museum staff. So that's one source of
There's another source.
material.
Eric puts out a yearly book of the city activities. I think
Mm-hmm.
there are copies in the library of
Right.
that book, but almost no one else has one. And it seems to me that material is available and could be edited.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We do
so,
have it in the library.
Yeah. So, but the first thing you have to do is sit down and design what it is you're trying to do, and then go from there. So.
Great. Now, Bob, since I'm kind of joining this all midstream, was this part of some subcommittee work that you were working on? The Colton Hall and Old Monterey Jail subcommittee?
No, it was Mike and I think, are the two people that have been talking about doing something digitally. But it's always been informal. There was no subcommittee to do this.
Okay. Great.
Any other questions? Were you gonna then move on, Inga, to a subcommittee
Well,
later in the meeting?
I was thinking, yeah, under the strategic plan, I think there's the possibility of creating some new subcommittees. So there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So I
there'll
guess,
be more on this later.
right. So for now, we need to see if there's any public comment.
We did that, didn't we?
For,
On his
No, not in this.
presentation?
We
I
haven't
think that was
done.
for the
No?
roll call, wasn't it?
Oh, that was on the minutes. I apologize.
we
Yeah,
can
I'm having
combine these.
Where I am.
So for any viewers
Fantastic.
watching, it is best to follow along on YouTube channel since it has the shortest delay. You can dial 831-582-6500. Again, that number is 831-582-6500. That is to comment either on this presentation or to make public comments on anything that is not on the agenda. You can press *5 to be placed in the queue to speak. And that phone number one last time is 831-582-6500. And Commissioner O'Neill, there are no callers.
Thank you, ma'am. So there's no action required at this time, if I understand that correctly, but we may take some action later on in form of the committee. Bob, thank you very much. It was very interesting. I think there are huge possibilities there. As you said, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the next item on the agenda, I think we've satisfied the requirement for public comment in general. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But the next item is Museum and Cultural Arts Division Activity Report.
Oh.
I think that might be.
Okay, so so the report in your packet doesn't share a whole lot of news. This is the report that usually in the past has had all these great photographs and all these great comments that visitors have provided for the different wonderful museums. And so there wasn't any of that because, of course, the museums are closed. And then cell phone tours, I didn't have time to pull those numbers, but I've since pulled those numbers, and I'll make sure to include them in future reports. We had 178 unique visitors, and they viewed 318 pages. So if I had provided the chart for you, you could have compared it to last month, and you'll see that actually the numbers are going up again. So I think that that shows that there's definitely interest in the museums, and even though we are closed. And then when I looked at the breakdown by state of origin, California was 100 of those unique visitors. So most of the people that are visiting our site, even by cell phone, are state residents, which is what you would expect because not a lot of people are crossing state lines at this point. I did not report some exciting news that I have received, which is that a request to fill the PTS position of artifact specialist that we talked about has been approved.
Wow.
And so I'll go ahead and recruit for that. So starting with the
Great.
folks that have worked here before, and then we should have somebody on board soon. And the idea we had, I think we all discussed this, was they can help with planning once we're able to reopen, but we can meanwhile be looking at what other similar sites have done in terms of how to reopen, and we would be looking at the Presidio Museum and Colton Hall as our priorities once we can reopen. And then we'd have somebody who can work with Bob and Mike on getting some virtual tours on our website, because we know that there's an interest. We know school's starting back up again and people are interested in California history, and we want to have a presence online. And then also, of course, there's the general stewardship of the collections and the stewardship of the facilities, which I would love to have an assistant with that. So there's plenty for the PTS position to do.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's great news.
Yes, definitely.
Inga,
And
could
then-
you,
Any question?
yeah, Inga, could you refresh us on what PTS means?
I'm so sorry, sure. So PTS means hourly, part-time seasonal is what the PTS actually stands for. And what that means is we're not talking about a full-time position or a regular part-time benefited position. So these are hourly positions. And in the past, the artifact specialist was an hourly employee, so that isn't a change. And also the Colton Hall Museum's docents were hourly as well. So it's consistent with those positions. What it doesn't mean is it's not a regular part-time person coming back for 30 hours a week with a benefits package. So we're not at that point yet with the city, but we can use these Ferguson funds, which is separate from the general fund, to bring somebody in to help staff the museums along with me.
Great.
Any other questions for Inga? Did you have anything else to add, Inga?
Well, I did want to correct something that I was a little precipitous, is that the right word? In my report, I had said we moved our artwork back into Colton Hall, and actually that had to be rescheduled. So we're doing that this Thursday as opposed to what we had scheduled, which was on Friday of last week. And just to remind you that when we had a lot of activity was going on with protests and so forth, just for safekeeping, we moved some things into the vault, and now we're going to be moving them back into Colton Hall.
Thank you.
Sure.
Last chance for questions. Okay, thank you very much for that report. Good
And
news.
we open that up to public comment.
For any
Francesca?
yes. For any viewers watching that would like to make a comment, you may dial 831-582-6500. Again, 831-582-6500. You will be automatically muted upon entry. You may press *5 to be placed in the queue to speak. Chair O'Neill, there are no callers.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to review and adopt the strategic plan for fiscal years 2020 through 2024. I'll turn it over to Inga again.
Okay, great. So on February 24th, commissioners will remember that you looked at the previous strategic plan and the accomplishments under the previous plan, and you discussed some potential objectives and tasks for the coming years. And then that's sort of where things were left. And then the strategic planning subcommittee, since that time, met with me, and that's Chair O'Neill and Commissioners Castagna and Evans. And we had a couple of meetings in July, and we went over the excellent notes that I believe it was Chair O'Neill took. Not to say that Castagna and Evans didn't take great notes as well, but anyway, we looked at the previous notes from February, and we drafted a new plan, and that's what you find in the packet before you. So this is a draft for you to consider for adoption. And unfortunately, there are a couple of typos, we'll call them. Since we were working off a previous plan, there were just a few things that I hadn't cleaned up when this went before you. So if you can look at packet page 11, And under the resources column, that very last cell, I unfortunately had left Dennis Copeland's name there. And I didn't want anybody to think that Dennis Copeland was going to be our staff support there, maybe at some future date, but at this point, that name should be replaced with mine. And then on the next page, I believe it is, packet page 12, that same column under resources, second cell down, you can strike the word commission. And then the fourth cell down, unfortunately, strike Chalet's name. That should be mine for now. And then the fifth cell down, strike the word commission. You walk through the strategic report, or should a plan, or should we? I'm happy just to take questions, or if one of the committee members wanted to point out some highlights. How should we do it?
I lost it.
You lost the plan?
No, I lost everybody.
Oh, no.
Well, since we've had,
Let's see if I can do something here.
could I have the floor or whatever?
Yes.
Since we've had a chance to review this before the meeting,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the strategic plan with including the corrections that Inga has indicated.
Thank you, John. Anyone else want to second that?
Second, sure.
Kimberly, thank you. Thank you. So do we have any discussion? I think what we did in that committee meeting is we took out all the stuff that had been accomplished or just been carried over for a long time. Some of it was partially done, so we updated the tasks so they are current and they are the logical next step. And we tried to come up where we needed new due dates. We came up with some what we thought were realistic due dates without unduly delaying action. And I think that was the general tenor of the meeting. What the other commissioners may have something to add.
This is Bob. I have a question about goal 1, item 1. We had in the original part, including technology, and then we have the subcommittee, and A1 and A2 are indicated as completed, but the subcommittee in the comments identified short-term goals, including technology, moving the gift shop, etc. So I don't think we've done any of those things. So do they need to be a part of the plan or something?
Right. So good point. So I think then did we have a new completion date for those?
So maybe, we could put all 3 of those, or the A1 and A2 to June 2021, just as we did with part 3.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And I had a question. We talked about the Path of History master plan, the draft master plan. What subcommittee will be reviewing that, Inga?
So I believe that's in the next report where we're going to review and adopt. No, so sorry, in the next agenda item, we are going to be looking at commission subcommittee appointments and then deciding if we need a special subcommittee for that.
I see.
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on Bob's point. If we're going to move under A1, I think the things under the comments, and that is technology, moving the gift shop, etc.
Mhm.
Could we not specify in there moving gift shop? Or did we already do that?
No, I don't think it's happened, has it? Has the gift shop moved?
I thought it
I
had.
don't know.
So I'm not in a good position to say because I know where the gift shop was effective in March, but it's possible that it was moved earlier in last fiscal year to its current
Where did
location.
you see it? Where did you see it in March?
Okay, so when you come up the stairs, the back stairs into Fulton Hall, the gift shop is to the left and right of where the staff person sits.
That's where I remember it having been.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we need to keep that item on the list so we don't lose it.
Right.
I guess what might be helpful for Inga and I is to know what was the intent for relocating the gift shop and to where, and we're trying to fill in the knowledge gaps a little bit.
Yeah. Can anyone answer that question?
Well, it seemed to me in the past, the gift shop was kind of stirred together with the area where the staff might work. And it wasn't clear exactly what was gift shop and what was staff area. And I think they moved that desk out there, but it's still not really defined, I don't think, as a gift shop per se. I think maybe we need some sort of a display case or something that kind of demarks the area and also displays the wares that one might purchase there. But that's just my recollection. When we've had concerts there and the performers wanted to sell CDs and that sort of thing, it all happened kind of in that area, but it wasn't clear that we were now moving into a gift shop where they could have displayed their CDs and that sort of thing. So it's pretty informal, I guess, is what my take is. And maybe we want to make it a little more formal.
That makes sense.
It sounds like we want to keep that item in this plan and come up with a definitive answer.
So I would say that June of this current fiscal year might be a little early for that to happen, since we don't know at this point when the museum's going to physically reopen, unless we think during closure would be the best time to move things around. But of course,
well, you want to put December 2021?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
And we'll put that under the second column, A, including technology and moving the gift shop.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question regarding the technology. Is that the technology that we've just talked about with Bob and Mike, or was there some hint that we were going to maybe look at creating a separate subcommittee that was maybe education and technology or something along those lines, or is that included just in this little mention here? Is what they're doing included in this mention of technology?
Well, it certainly could be.
Okay.
But if we want, it wouldn't hurt to have, I suppose, a subcommittee or a subcommittee that's just going to spend time on the technology, that's something that can certainly use a lot of time, especially in the early phases where you're trying to figure out what exactly we're going to present.
I would think we'd need a separate committee or an ad hoc committee to solve the problem that Bob just described. And then after that problem of technology is solved, then we're going to need to figure out how we're going to put it into each of the museums.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that, I mean, what Bob showed us was the beginning of something, but it seems to me that it's bigger than just technology. It's education.
Sure.
And technology is the means by which we educate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I don't know, to be a stickler for language or whatever, but to me, it seems like that should be the focus of the subcommittee, if that's going to be a separate subcommittee.
We could call it something like digital interpretation or something like that. Because it seems like it's interpretation, right? That's what I think in the museum parlance they call it.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And we're leaning towards a separate subcommittee on that, I'm assuming.
Sounds like. And that can go into the next report.
Yes. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Changes? Okay. So we'll open it to public comment now on this strategic plan.
What,
For viewers who
we got a motion on the
would like
floor.
to-
Aren't we supposed to have public comments before we go to the motion? Before we vote on the motion?
Correct. That's what we'll do right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for anyone watching that would like to make a comment, please dial 831-582-6500. You will be muted upon entry. Please dial *5 to be placed in the queue to speak. Again, that phone number is 831-582-6500. And again, for anybody watching, it is best, if you would like to make a comment, to follow the meeting on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/City of Monterey. Chair O'Neill, there are no public comments.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other discussion among the commissioners before we vote? So we have a motion and a second. And I think the motion includes the changes we've made. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Francesca, would you like to call the roll for vote?
Commissioner Castagna,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Peak,
Yes.
Commissioner Sovereign,
Yes.
Commissioner Wall,
She's muted.
You're
I read
muted.
it. You said yes.
okay, she is. Vice Chair Wotowski,
Yes.
Chair O'Neill,
Yes?
and Commissioner Wall, I see that you've unmuted.
And it's yes.
Thank you.
Well, approved unanimously. Thank you very much. I think the final item here On commission subcommittee appointments for 2020 and appointment of subcommittees for 2021.
Okay, so this is actually a report that had been prepared by Dennis Copeland. And it's a report that summarizes the great accomplishments that the committees had achieved, and then opens the floor to appointment of, actually opens the floor if people wish to continue to serve on the committees that they're on. That's great. And then do we need to have any new committees? And one of the questions that's come up is the Path of History. Does that need a special committee to manage it? I guess we could take them one by one. So under museums, we have the Colton Hall Museum and Old Monterey Jail. That's currently Bob Evans, Mike Sovereign, and Bill Wachowski. And do they wish to continue to serve?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then under the Pacific Biological Lab and Canry Worker Shacks, we have John Castagna, Kimberly Peak, and Bill Wachowski. Do the three of you wish to continue?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. We have the Lower Presidio Historic Park and Presidio Museum. And that's John O'Neill, Mike Sovereign, and Bill Wachowski. Would you like to continue?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have a programs, under programs, we have a music committee, which of course right now your work has kind of been put on pause, but that's John Castagna, Bob Evans, Kathleen Wall. Do you three wish to continue on that committee?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then the Public Art and History Committee is Bob Evans, Kimberly Peak, and Kathleen Wall. Did you wish to continue to serve?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Okay. And then we have liaisons indicated, and we had some discussion of this before, but we have Bob Evans is listed as our liaison for Historic Monterey. Kathleen Wall is Monterey Museum of Art, and Bill Wachowski, Old Monterey Foundation.
I've never had any contact with the historic Monterey. I don't know whether that's my fault or their fault or something else.
Okay.
But I mean, I'd be happy to coordinate with them, but
So has anybody, so that's good to know. And has anybody been that liaison before, and can they tell us a little bit about what it's involved in the past?
well, my understanding was that Dennis attended those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
But I was never informed of the meeting, so I couldn't go, and I don't know really what goes on.
Okay. So it looks like in parentheses it says that's the History Fest meetings only. And so I'll find out about, I'm pretty sure that we're on pause with History Fest because that's October. And given the pandemic and the health restrictions, I don't think there's much that we're going to be able to do for History Fest. But I'll find out from our partners.
I
what
think
the status
Chalet has been very much involved in that too in the past.
Right. There's a history roundtable that Dennis had helped establish, and then they meet once a month. And I know that Chalet and Dennis and Jordan had all participated. So I will find out from that group about History Fest.
Yeah.
Kathleen, have you been involved with Monterey Museum of Art?
No, and I have tried also. I talked to them once or twice and I said, I'm your liaison with the Golden Museums Committee. And they said, oh, that's very nice. But from either side, have I really seen a real role or what I should be doing? I mean, I'm happy to keep the title, but I'm not sure how useful it is either. Unless the commission wants me to do something in particular.
Okay. And I think that sort of depends on what projects we're working on, it sounds like.
Right.
And Bill, you're the liaison with Old Monterey Foundation. I assume you want to continue in that capacity, yes?
Yeah, I would like to. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So it sounds like for the liaison work, we need to clarify, what exactly we're expecting, especially of Historic Monterey and Monterey Museum of Art connection there. But you're all willing to continue to serve. That sounds good.
And if we're gonna have a technology committee, I'd just as soon not be involved in the articulation with the History Fest, because I think we might want to spend some time articulating with the state parks people and their use of technology, since it's so much in our circle of activity.
Okay. So perhaps for now we'll leave that Historic Monterey liaison role vacant, or does somebody want to fill that position even though it's not clearly defined?
My suggestion in view of the current situation with the pandemic would be to eliminate those positions, since nothing's happening anyway, and we can always appoint a liaison first or later. I think it's a waste of something or other to just have the position and nobody doing anything.
Does that sound okay with you, Kathleen?
I presume that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
One reason I think for having these is if we attended the meetings and we got a heads up well in advance of when something's going to happen, which this committee does not get. And I know some other committees in the city commissions don't get that heads up either until it's next week and we haven't heard about it yet. This is literally the case in some items that have come to our attention, but it's too late to get involved. And so we have no input, and we can't even try to coordinate for the city with some of the activities. So maybe John's right for now, nothing's going to happen, but I think we need to give some thought to, if we're going to have these positions, how we get some benefit out of them. And it may be that the city will have to go to these organizations and ask that we be allowed to have a liaison.
Right, and I know that Dennis, for instance, in the past had met fairly often with Stuart from the Monterey Museum of Art when Stuart was here. So it seems like he provided sort of that liaison role.
Yeah, not us. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then he was on that Historic Monterey group, and he helped plan History Fest. So it's really more his role as well.
He was out there.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, if that situation comes back, if you're the liaison on those meetings or someone else on the staff, then maybe we don't have to have a commissioner doing it. As long as the information comes back, Maybe the old Monterey Foundation is a different case. Seems like Bill has an in there.
Mhm.
Probably gets better relation than anybody else.
That's correct.
Yes.
I guess I want to say in these days when your city staff is so tight, however, I'm happy to keep up the nominal title and try to be involved with the Museum of Art in any way that I can. That might be
Well,
useful.
that may be the approach, is that as Inga gets more involved and wants to hand things off, then she can
Yeah.
ask the commissioner to take over that role. But
Yeah.
Sure.
maybe the initial liaison ought to come from a staff member and then get handed off to a commissioner.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Was that pretty much the feeling of everybody?
Sounds
Sure.
good to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Final subcommittee was the Monterey 250 subcommittee. And as we know, most of the Monterey 250 activities had to be canceled because of the pandemic. We did have a birthday celebration, which went very well, which was the 4 mayors having a conversation. And then for public art, we know that the giant abalone sculpture was selected. And then I and Nat can provide a little bit of update on that, which is, as you can imagine, the giant abalone project has been delayed because of the pandemic. Some of the materials or some of the work people that needed to provide materials were not able to deliver on time because of delays due to the pandemic. So, Nat, did you want to say a little bit more about sort of where we are at this point?
Yeah, not a lot of detail to report at this time. We have been in touch with the artist who, as Inga says, has had a hard time securing some of the material that's needed to build the sculpture itself. There's a special type of cement that and other materials they're trying to acquire. But I've got a phone call with the artist tomorrow, and we are looking forward to seeing a more detailed progress report on their activity and continue discussions with Cannery Row Company regarding continuing the sponsorship of the sculpture. So we should have more information for all of you at our next commission meeting.
Great, thank you. So now I would think, Chair O'Neill, we might want to talk about some additional committees.
Yes, ma'am.
One would be the Path of History Committee. And when I consulted with Dennis about who had been on the Path of History Committee before, he said, well, there really hadn't been a committee per se. It could fall under public art and history, but to me, that sounds like a pretty big assignment, since the Path of History Master Plan is a pretty big project, and it's a very extensive report that's been developed so far, that's in draft form. I would think a separate Path of History Committee is probably needed to sort of go through that with the folks that have been working on it, and then report back to this commission on the progress. So that would be my recommendation. And then, of course, there's the other committee that we discussed was the Digital Interpretation Committee. So were there any others?
Well, that sounds like plenty.
Okay, great.
The only
I can't
reason
think of
that
any other.
the only reason that the Path of History might have been associated with the public art is because there's a Path of History mural that was discussed and was to be put up. I don't know whether that ever happened or not. But at any rate, I think that's why the two may have been seen as as one thing, but I agree. There's a lot to the logistics of the path of history, and a lot of that I think may have gotten lost when Jeff Krebs retired. He had plans for bringing the path down alongside of the Pacific Street entrance and widening a sidewalk, and there was a lot of detail, I think, in his plans that I hope didn't get lost.
Oh, Bob, I checked with the current city engineer. As far as I know, it has got lost. I think he was going to go back and check with Jeff Krebs. And actually, whatever committee there is could review the path of history draft master plan and that pedestrian access that you talked about, which connects the rec trail to Old Town.
Yes.
Right. So quite a bit of work has, so this was a NCIP project that was funded in 2015. And so we can go back to those documents. And then I know that the museum staff had been working on it ever since. And there's a concept about adding additional sites and bringing two different parts of the historic sites together into this revised path. And I think the document right now is about 200 pages long. It could be wrong, but it looked very extensive to me, and different parts have been developed and so forth. So I think this would be a nice big project for some commissioners to take on to work with me on seeing where it is and what still needs to be done to it.
But Inga, as Bob said, there are two separate studies. The one you're talking about is the one done by the intern. The other one it was under Jeff Krebs, and they hired a consultant. And I think there was a draft study, and I've been trying to find a copy of the draft study, and nobody in engineering knows what it's about. Okay.
Well, I'm confident we can track it down. But thank you for getting that started.
Thank you for your confidence.
Yeah, Jeff actually made a presentation at one point to the commission, so it may be in the commission minutes or something.
There you go, in the packet, a copy of the packet.
Yeah, he had slides in the whole 9 yards.
Okay. So it sounds like Commissioner Wachowski's interested in being on a committee. Is that right?
Yeah, to me, I think this is going to be most of our other committees are ongoing. To me, this is sort of an ad hoc committee. I would like to be involved, particularly on that pedestrian access study. And I did work with that intern. I went out 2 or 3 times and walked downtown Monterey with her. So I would like to see her results.
Okay. And are you talking about Elizabeth Anderson or a previous intern?
No, Elizabeth Anderson.
Okay. Other commissioners?
Well, I'm interested, but I'm afraid I'm going to be on too many subcommittees, but I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, I guess I could volunteer if you need somebody.
Okay.
I think I'd be interested also.
Oops, you got cut off, John O'Neill.
Yes, I do.
So did you say you wanted to serve on that subcommittee? Ad hoc committee?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Great. And then for the digital interpretation, we have Bob, Evan, and Mike.
Okay.
I would sure like to see Kimberly on there.
I was just
Me
going to
too.
say, I would like to do that if I could.
Okay. So it looks like we've done the reappointments and we've appointed a couple of ad hoc subcommittees as well, correct?
Yes.
That sounds
I have
great.
one- I have a backup question. When we were talking about the 250th anniversary, there was some discussion, at least if not action, on a mural. And I don't know whether that got funded, and we certainly had made contact with an artist. And there was this, when they started talking about demolishing the parking structure on between Pacific and Cali P, then there was another site selected on the corner of Egads. What is that? Not Washington. The next street over from Washington towards Alvarado. Anyway, is that all gone away?
I think that the idea, as I recall, was that as funding permitted, this mural concept would be pursued, and funding was not available, is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have sent a letter to the artist that nothing's going to happen, I assume, at some point. I don't know whether she.
No. I'll have to check on that. That's a good question.
We just didn't want to leave her hanging out there.
Right, exactly. Oh, okay. I'll check and see if
Yeah,
Chalet.
Chalet may have followed up and taken care of it.
Yeah, I can find that out. Great. So did we need public comment? Are we ready for public comment on this report?
I think so.
Okay.
All right. For any viewers watching that would like to make a public comment, please dial 831-582-6500. Again, that phone number is 831-582-6500. Callers will be automatically muted upon entry. Please press *5 to be placed in the queue to speak. And Commissioner O'Neill, there are no callers.
Thank you, ma'am. I think no further action is required here. We've done this by consensus, so are we happy?
Yes.
Okay,
Great.
and we have just one more item, and that's the opportunity for commissioners to comment. So, let's see, John, I think you're first in the alphabet.
Who?
John Castagna.
No comments.
We've lost my alphabetic list here. Bob?
Oh, I think I've had plenty to say today. Thank you all
Okay.
for listening.
Thank you.
Kimberly?
No comment. Thank you.
Mike?
No comment.
Thank you. Kathleen?
No, nothing special.
Thank you. Bill?
No comment.
Thank you, sir. I have no comment either, except to say our next scheduled meeting is Monday, August 24th.
Okay.
Okay?
Already.
All right.
Any last minute questions? We will